one thing that's so absolutely striking about Rav Aharon in his life is the level of absolute achrayus, absolute responsibility he took for things, if it's related to his yeshiva or past that. Rav Aharon, who we should have mentioned before, by the way, lived from 1892 to 1962, which he died at around 70 or a little bit before 70, which is a little youngish on today's standards. When you think about how much he did from growing up in Soslovich, they used to call him Soslovich or Ilui, to Slobodka, to Slutsk, heading the yeshiva with his father-in-law, and then of course on to America where we're focused. We discussed a lot about Lakewood and what he accomplished and what he was trying to accomplish and what he did really accomplish, turning Lakewood into an enormous Makom Torah. Wasn't very, very large when he passed away, but he had obviously set up the precedence for his son, Reb Shner, to take over and turn it into what it became, what it is today. But it's a lot more than that. We've mentioned a few times his aspects and how he was involved in Hatzalah. Just want to tell you something. Eliezer Silver, another gadol, the famous gadol from Cincinnati, was also involved in Hatzalah, said about Rav Aharon. This he mentioned it, a hesped. Rav Silver said that he was a driving force and decision maker in Vad Hatzalah, that Vad that was helping Jews during the Holocaust, which we'll talk about in coming videos. But he made everyone commit himself to keep his role secret, and therefore everybody thought that others were the chief activists. Very interesting. Rav Aharon kept himself behind the scenes, or at least they shared equal roles with Rav Aharon. That's what people thought, but it's not true. He was behind everything. So he was Mr. Hatzalah during the war years. And he took on other battles. Torah Masora, which was founded by Rav Shaiga Feivel Mendelovich, which goes on Baruch Hashem Ad Yom Hazeh. Rav Shaiga Feivel, the great one, had said that he made a goal for his organization, largely manned by his students, that every town that had 5,000 Jews would have a day school. First he made the goal 10,000, then he reduced it to 5,000, and that was Rav Shaiga Feivel's vision. Rav Aharon, after Rav Shaiga Feivel passed away in 1948, was the chief Das Torah behind the organization. Obviously, many people like Dr. Joe Kamenetsky and others who were on the ground doing all the work, etc. Rav Aharon was very much a driving force behind that. So maybe that's in America. It didn't stop there. There's something called Chinuch Atzmai, which is an Israeli school system. Ad Yom Hazeh. At a certain point, the government said they were cutting off money to what was called the Zerem Revi'i, the fourth way, which I guess was more the Haredi Chinuch or something like that. And they said now there's only going to be secular schools, Mamlachti Dati, which is something with which the Gedolim of that world weren't happy with, and they saw that we need some type of system like that. And who jumped in to raise funds for the Israeli system? Not America. It was Rav Aharon Cutler, and he was also unique to my knowledge amongst American Gedolim for involving himself. Certainly with things like Giyus Banot, but very much with Israeli politics. He came before elections sometimes and campaigned, etc., for these things. And it's just a huge, staggering range of endeavors all the time while he had this little side project called Lakewood Yeshiva. After he passed away, Gedolei Yisrael, we were talking one time about something that had happened with Chinuch Atzmai. They needed new teachers, and they didn't know where the teachers would come from, and they said, well, let's take from the Kolim teachers, and this idea didn't find favor in Rav Aharon's eyes. He said, no, we have to take from Rebbeim that already, are Rebbeim, etc., not from Kolim, not from the Kolim. And someone said, well, where are we going to get the money for? They're a lot much more expensive. Rav Aharon said, I'll raise the money. So there he went, another $250,000 to raise. It's a staggering range of activities. Just to see some specific examples, Rav Weisberg, who was the Menahel, the financial Menahel of Lakewood Yeshiva, complained to Rav Aharon, we haven't paid salaries for 5 months. That's a type of pretty big problem. And Rav Aharon was involved. He said he was upset that he's so involved in Chinuch Atzmai. Now listen to the godless here. So Rav Aharon answered, Hatzedek Yitcha, you're right, Ein li ma lashiv, I have nothing to answer. But what can I do? I'm convinced that Chinuch Atzmai is more important, the 40,000 children learning in Chinuch Atzmai is more important for my yeshiva, so I have to raise money for them. That was that was his response, which is really typical of a certain thinking. And here, just to see how he did get involved in Chinuch Atzmo, at a certain point he was unhappy with who the Hanhala was, the management was, and he got on a plane, came to Israel, and he appointed Rav Shraga Grossbard. And obviously there were a lot of difficulties, and there was a tremendous isnagdus to this move that he made. And they said it's Halvanas Panim, it's not nice to the old establishment, understandably. But Rav Aharon instead with his, he said, I'm not leaving to here until we see the new Hanhala as I think it should be. That was his leadership. That was how he's pushing through, taking on every battle. And it wasn't just, but it wasn't just the big battles. It was also for individuals. Lakewood Talmud Rabbi Yosef El had no mother and father, and his father was residing in Eretz Yisrael. His older sister was confined about finding the right shidduch and decided to visit the Reshiva. What's going to be with my brother? Who's going to take achrayas for him? Rav Aharon stood up, pointed his finger to himself, and said one word in Yiddish: Ich, I will take care of your brother. Right, just like that. Not I'll try, not bli neder. Ich, I will try. And this is really summed up beautifully in another book that we're using called The Legacy of Maran Rav Aharon Cutler, by I think a Talmud of his named Yitzchak Dershowitz. So he writes here in a footnote, page 26, about Rav Aharon's Mamarim, his Svarim and his ideas. He says that treasure of his shmuzim and that living documentation of his awesome, practically unfathomable acceptance of full, seemingly limitless responsibility to build, to correct, to deal with every situation, to champion every worthy cause, to raise the alarm, to lead in battle, to teach, uplift, and save the generation. That was, my friends, Rav Aharon Cutler.